Today, let's build an API status checker agent. And at the end of this video, you're going to have all of this in a public collection that you can download and use immediately. Hey everyone, Sterling here. Today, we're going to build an agent from the ground up. Now, the idea is that we're going to build this into an MCP server that I can use and pull and check any one of my collections at any given time and make sure everything is healthy. What we're going to do here is build a more advanced AI agent. So if you want to see a more foundational video, click on the card right here. Okay, so let's dig in. So on the screen, I have my collection. Now, in this case, I want to actually go and take you over and look at this whole spec. So this is actually working in production. I have a shipped railway app. This is a Postgres database, and it's all working in production. I can also run it on local. So I can run local 3003. But in this case, I want to check the status of my APIs in real time. So here's my OpenAPI spec. So you can see that this is here. This API status checker complete collection is based off of this YAML file. And in here, you can see I've got a health check and I can test it. And what I have here, this is an environment variable. I have this all the way over in prod. And this has the URL for the base URL, and I can see that everything looks to be healthy. But this is tedious if I want to go through and I want to check every single one of them. And I just got to go, okay, well, where's user one? And we find them and so on and so forth. So in this case, let's build a flow that's going to go through all of them. And then let's add an agentic step into here to have the agent act as an SRE. I'm going to build a flow from the ground up. Now, in this case, I've already built a flow action here, a flow folder, but I'm going to create my first flow module. Now, first off, I need to check to make sure I get the APIs from the Postman collection. So the idea here is I want to take just a collection URL and drop that into Claude or OpenAI, whatever my MCP is loaded in. And then I wanted to just run a whole system check on everything. By the way, I should point out that the APIs I'm going to need is a blank API request. You'll see that in a few minutes. And I want to get a Postman collection. So if I have the Vault ID, if I have the collection UID, that is, in this case, is coming from my Vault. But this is actually going to be passed in as a variable into my agent, and it will just automatically run. So that's a couple other foundational pieces that we'll need here. So I'm going to go back to my flow, and we're going to have this flow module. We want to take the URL, so we want to take the Postman collection. We want to take my Postman API key, and I want to have a base URL. That's going to be my railway app. Okay, so from here, I'm going to take the collection URL. So we'll call this is going to be my input. We'll call it Postman collection URL. And next, I'm going to take my Postman API key. So we'll need to pass that in. And lastly, we're going to take the base URL. That's going to be our railway app. From here, we're going to do a little bit of modification. And before I do anything, I'm going to actually build a scenario. So let's create the collection URL. And all I need to do is I want to test this collection. Now, again, this is actually running in production. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy the link, and I'm going to drop that link right in here. And I'm going to get rid of all the extra stuff. And all I'm looking for is my Postman. This is going to have the collection. Here's my collection ID. But we're not always going to know what that collection ID is. So we're going to do a little bit of fancy stuff here. We're going to take that URL and we're going to do some editing. So from here, I'm going to do an evaluate block, and we're going to add some regex to pull everything past that collection. First, what I'll do here, we're going to call this URL, and we'll save that. We're going to clean up this a little bit. I'm going to need that. And in the URL, I've already pre-done all of this, but you'll know it's going to be url.match, and then everything after the collection is what I want. We're going to run this, and we should see the collection UID. Great. So now we're going to grab this. And now that I have the collection UID, this is the part where I need my Postman API collection. So I'm going to get this collection. and I'm going to pass in the collection UID here. And because I've got my API key, I'm going to be passing this in as a configuration. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But again, I talked about that in a previous episode of Agent of the Week. You can always go back and check that. But we'll get through this in a few minutes. Now let's run this again. So when I run this, I'm getting a failure, and that's okay. I know that I've got my body here. This is going to give me an error. I've got my API key. This should be calling from my Postman Vault. So before I continue, I actually want to go back over to my collection here. And because I've got this, let's grab the collection UID, and I'm going to run this. But in this case, I'm actually going to change this just to do this now. Let's add this as an environment variable. Actually, we'll just add this as a collection, and we'll drop that in. Let's get rid of that. We'll get rid of that, and let's send. So this should verify with us. Yeah, so we're getting everything. So I've got in my authorization, this is pulling from my API key and my collection. So I know this is working. So let's go back to the flow module and just double check why this isn't working. Okay, so in prod, this should be getting my environment variable from here. Oh, let's not worry about that right now. We'll run this. There we go. So one of the reasons that this is failing, and I'm going to need this later, but I'm not going to use it right now. But when I do ship this, I'm going to actually pass this in as a configuration. However, I don't have the flow action created yet, so I don't have the configuration options. So here we go. I've got this body collection and everything looks great. And I've got my array of all of my items, and so these are going to be the folders. So I've got my system check here, system and health control. The next one we'd expect this to be is user management. And there we go. So I'm going to grab this whole thing. So remember in the last video, what I showed you is that you can grab anything from this output and just drag this onto the canvas, and it'll automatically come out of that and be connected here. So now that I've got this out here, now the goal is that I actually want to flatten this list, because I know that this is a nested list of APIs. So, these aren't going to be at the root level. I have my endpoint here that's in this folder. So I'm going to flatten this out. Again, we're going to grab and we're going to take this as an evaluate block, and we're going to call this collection. And let's grab that regex. All right, we've pasted it, and we're going to run this again. And we're just going to make sure everything looks good. Just going to run this. Let's look at the results. We've got our root endpoint here. So it looks like we are looking good. So now all we need to do, so we've got all of these keys. Look at that. So user login. We're going to have all the support tickets. So this is actually looking really, really good. So now that we've got this, now that we've flattened this loop, and so we have instead of having nested arrays, we have one singular array with everything. Let's grab our for loop here. And now we're going to loop over everything, and we're going to check to make sure everything works. Okay, we're going to run this, and I want to look at everything. Let's do this. I'm going to look at the request. All right. So I want this raw URL. So once again, I'm going to just simply drag and drop this onto the canvas, and I have that. You know what? Let's clean up this. Let's just close this a little bit. And from here, I'm going to run this again. We're just going to double check everything. And I know I want to pass this in with variables. So we're going to grab another evaluate block. We'll call this URL. And here is the regular expression. And this is all it's going to do here is I'm going to get rid of, see this raw URL. I want to get rid of the base URL, and I only want what's after, which is users, because that base URL again is going to be already set in another request. Okay. Next, we're going to take and we're going to make this a template. This I'm going to call the URL. and that's what's coming in. And I'm going to call this, we're going to call this the base URL. And from here, we know that I'm going to pass this all the way in. So let's grab that all the way. There we go. We're going to pass that into this template block. And we'll call that base URL. All right. So from there, let's call this base URL. And we'll call this URL. Right. So, and the reason why I'm doing that is that base URL, because I'm getting that passed in as a variable, I want to just pull that from the flow module as it is. And next, we're going to use that empty request that I had. So we'll do an HTTP request. This is the API status check blank request. This has nothing. It's going to take the entirety of the URL. And that's what this URL is here. So I'll just get rid of that. And we should have a blank URL. And at the end, let's just go ahead and collect all of this and just double check that this is all working. Again, I'm going to run. Oh, we got a failure. So let's just double check what we have here. That base URL. Oh, I haven't defined that base URL. That's a problem. All right, so let's go grab that base URL and make sure we have it in here. So I'm going to go back to my spec here, and I have that base URL right there. So we'll copy paste that, go back to the flow, and I'm going to pass the base URL. There we go. So we'll save that. And now when we run this, I should have no problem. There we go. So things are all working. It's running. Says backend. All right, so we've got that. And what's the list that we're getting? This should be running because we've got our for loop here, which is giving us a list of everything. And we want on each one of these, let's just double check. So we've got our, okay, we're going to continue to debug this a little bit. And I'm still not sure why this template is not working. Okay, so what I ended up finding out or realizing is that if that template string was connected all the way through, it was only pulling it once, so that loop wasn't being read. So that loop has to be a completely closed loop. So in this case, I'm going to go back. I'm going to call this URL, and I'm going to create a new variable, call it a string block. We're going to paste in that URL here. We'll call that base URL. And we'll go base URL. And let's connect that here. Okay. So now this is running. Cool. So from here, I'm going to get rid of this collection block. And we're going to do that blank URL block. So API, and I have a blank URL, and that URL is going to be fed right in. All right. So if it's good, we'll collect it here. And if it's bad, we'll also collect it. So anything that is successful, it'll go into one set of collections. And if it's failed, it'll go into another set. So that way it's going to pass that, and I can pass both of these out in the output. Let's run that real quick. By the way, I did forget to mention that I intentionally designed this API, like this backend, that there is going to be failures. That is purposeful on my part. I wanted to have, I think it's like 3 or 4 failed APIs just so we could see what's wrong. Or at least that we can see that we're grabbing something. Okay, so there's 4 APIs that are failing, and there should be 20 APIs that are working. Great. So from here, let's grab that output block, and I'm going to output this good list. So we'll call that success. And we'll grab the last one. We'll call it failed. All right. So now all of this is here. I've got a full collection I've got a full flow module with an input and an output. And We're going to just run this one more time just to double check that HTTP is running a lot, which is fantastic. It's giving us a lot of great information real quick. And that input, we have successful and failed. We're going to mark this as a snapshot. And now let's go back to our flows and let's create a flow action. So we'll create a flow action here. I want that flow action to be in here. And this is where I'm going to take and I'm going to build an agent block. And I can add tools. Now, if you haven't seen an agent block before, this is really, really cool. An agent block is just a block that is built into Postman Flows. You can pick any of the models that you'd like. So we've got right now, everything is through OpenAI. So you can have older models and everything. I'm going to just go GPT. Let's do GPT-5 mini, good for basic tasks. And what I've done is I've created a prompt that says you are a necessary that is checking the statuses of APIs in production. Given a list of successful and failed APIs, can you put together a report and include any proposed solutions? Now, this tool is going to pull from my API status checker. And in that body, we're just going to run that in. And let's pass that out. Let's run and see what happens. Okay, so we got back. Let me close that. And we finished this. This finished running. And we're going to check the results. And it looks like we've got some issues. That's not a problem because what I want to double check is in here. Let's go to the details. It understood that it was going to pull the API status checker. Oh, it looks like our API key is wrong. That is the part where we're going to add some configurations. So I'll be right back. I'm going to start adding a couple configurations. One is going to be called, right now, it's going to be called Postman API key. Now let me pull that from my 1Password. We'll save that. Don't want to save that again. And Postman collection URL. So I'm going to make sure I grab that Postman collection URL. I don't want to save this. Whoop. I want to call that new configuration Postman collection URL. And we'll drop that in. We're going to save that. And then when I come back down to the tool here that I've got, Postman collection URL, and we're going to put our API key here. And also for the sake of argument, I am going to put the base URL here. We're going to drop that in. I don't want to save that. We'll save it. And let's just make sure base URL is there. Okay, so let's try running this one more time and see what happens. You know what I might end up doing is I might end up moving away from GPT-5 because it is taking quite a long time. But let's just double check. All right, so it all came back. I was able to run, the system told me I ran the API status checker. So we've got the 4 failed. I knew that was going to happen. And I've got the 21 that were healthy. And I have my summary here. And that is what the output is here. So there's the executive summary So I'm going to change this. Let's try GPT 4.1. And now we're going to run the deploy here. We're going to call this status checker. And from here, I do want to change that. Let's change that to 60 seconds. It does show the configurations, which is great. We'll redeploy that with 1 minute. And let's just open this up in a new HTTP request and just double check. Since the context was empty, so what was it expecting? The this new action, body. I don't want any of that. So we'll come over here. Let's clean up our scenario. I'm not going to worry about that. We'll save that. Okay, we'll just run this one more time with no context. Although in the end, what I really do want to have in here is I do want to pass in the URL of the collection that I want. Okay, the results came back, production. Okay, so that all worked. All right, let's deploy this one more time. And we're going to check this here. We don't need any headers. We don't need any body. We're expecting 0 body. All right, this is looking good. Oh no, action did not run successfully. All right, so let's go to flows. We're going to check the analytics. New action. This one ran with an error. What was the error? Hey, agent. Oh, something happened while executing the flow. All right. By the way, we're going to call this API status checker. Let's make sure we get that updated. Okay, we know this is working. So let's going to try this one more time. Okay, it's still having an issue. So instead of doing that, let's go in and I'm actually going to create a scenario. We're going to call this, because we do want to make this a tool. And making this a tool, if you remember from the last video, making this a tool will actually turn this into an MCP server. And I'm going to drop this in. This is the tool. There's the name. I've got the definition here, or the description, sorry, and I have the input schema. So we'll save that. And now when I deploy this, you'll see this is MCP URL up here. So let's redeploy this once again. Make sure I'm on the latest snapshot, snapshot 12. And let's open this up as an MCP and connect to it. Okay, so we have that. Fantastic. So let's go in. I'm going to connect this to Claude Desktop and we'll see if this is working. Okay, I've loaded everything up into Claude and we can verify that by looking down here. Let me zoom out just a hair. You can look here and you can see that my API status checker is here. Oh, here it is right here. I had another one there, so I apologize, but we have API status checker is working and connected. So we're going to ask Claude, can you check the statuses of my APIs? And now all of this is being run through Postman Flow, which has been shipped as an MCP server. Okay, so it looks like my APIs are mostly healthy, which we knew was going to be the case. I have 21 that are working and 4 that are broken. 4 issues found, auth login. I was getting 404s. Cool. What this means and bottom line. So now we've been able to create a agent inside of Postman Flows that's going to check the statuses of all our APIs for a given collection. And I've shipped that agent as a MCP server and lock that and put that into Claude. And here in Claude, I can see that the MCP is indeed working, and that is coming straight from Postman Flows. So talk about how powerful that is. So all of this is going to be available in our public workspace. Go ahead and check that out. And if you like this, hit that like and subscribe button for more AI and API content. Thanks for watching.